Hello, this is my first time ever recording a time lapse of my art process and also recording a voiceover for it. While you watch, I'm going to talk about if Negan from The Walking Dead is a good or a bad person, and if he's a good character/villain. To start off with character, Negan portrays himself as this very charming, theatrical, sarcastic person. He is very manipulative and sadistic in his way of leadership. Negan believes in order through fear. He uses violence, threats, and most importantly, example to get his points across and to inflict that fear into those who see it. Negan is introduced in the season 6 finale at the lineup, where he famously uses a barbed wire wrapped baseball bat named Lucille to murder Glenn and Abraham. Negan does this after Rick's group killed a fairly large amount of men at a savior outpost. Glenn's death in particular put many viewers through a great deal of shock given he was such a fan favorite. That scene alone was enough for viewers to side fully with Rick's group and to hate Negan and the saviors as a whole. Rick's group went into a savior outpost with the intention of killing as many of them as possible, if not all. We're talking about tens and tens of men and women who were here at the outpost, not to mention the handful of saviors, Daryl and a couple more of the members killed on the road. So Negan really was just getting his get back, I guess you could say. I think that the choice by the writers to kill Glenn in this episode was very intentional, because even though Negan completely had a reason to kill some of Rick's people, the writers made a choice to have Negan kill a very loved character by so many people in order to make them feel that way about him. Because Glenn's death is so sudden, it doesn't really let the viewer think about, hey, this kind of makes sense. It's kind of fair if you think about it. Instead, the viewer is just thinking, oh my god, my favorite character just died. I hate this guy. Because that was the intention. The intention was to make the viewers hate Negan. I've seen an argument that what makes Negan worse, in a way, is the manner that he killed Glenn and Abraham. I'm not going to bring up Abraham as much because no one really talks about his death after, which is kind of messed up. Poor Abraham. Rest in peace. Miss you, bro. But it was mainly Glenn's death that impacted the viewer. Now, was Negan a good person? I had to get a couple of different opinions about this because Negan portrays himself as kind of basically being a dick, and that's his whole bit. But Negan was a good person, and he was a good leader. Negan adapted and changed because of the people around him and because of the people that he needed to control in order for him and his people to stay alive. And of course, in order for him to stay in power. Was he an amazing guy? No. He killed a lot of people. He was pretty sadistic about it. He was really mean to the people who were upset about the people who died. And I feel like one thing that also gets brushed under the rug a lot when people talk about Negan's character is all of his wives. In short, he pressured those women into being with him. You can tell through a couple of the episodes that the ladies have with Eugene that they don't want to be with him and they would rather see him dead, or even they would rather be dead, as one of the girls attempts suicide. Negan has this whole thing about consent, and he ends up punishing an attempted rapist that tries to go for Sasha when she is locked up at the sanctuary. But it's kind of hypocritical of him because while the ladies are probably consenting at some point, he's pressuring them. They know that if they're not here and they're not giving him what he wants, they're either not going to get special treatment, or the people that they know who are downstairs with the rest of the people are gonna suffer consequences too. I received the argument that if the girls really didn't want to be up there with Negan and they didn't want to have to do anything that he wanted, they had that choice to go back downstairs. While, yes, I agree with that, it's not like he was forcing them. He didn't have to give them a choice at all. He could treat everyone fairly. Everyone goes downstairs. He doesn't have wives at all. And it would be all fine and dandy, right? No, he's doing it for a selfish reason to get something that he wants. And to be very short with it, he's blackmailing them. So in those regards, Negan is selfish and manipulative in ways I guess you could say don't technically harm others, but it definitely puts people in really bad spots, very unnecessarily. Now, I could be biased here because Negan is like 100% my favorite character, and Jeffrey Dean Morgan, the guy who plays him, ends up becoming my favorite actor. So I'm a little biased when I say that he's a good character and he's well written. So I'm biased. Is Negan a bad person? Kinda. Is he a good character? Yes. Is he a good villain? I want to say yes, but I do believe that the governor was way more of a better villain than Negan was. Because if you look at it from a logistical way, Negan was just a leader. He was a guy. And he was just doing what he needed to do, given the cards he was dealt. So he wasn't a villain. He wasn't like a trophy villain, I guess. I don't know how I would say that. But I think that the governor, and I'll maybe make a separate video about that. The governor is a better villain because he's more like a wolf in sheep's clothing. Because he plays this like super awesome guy, and he's like the best leader, the governor. And actually, he's evil. With Negan, he's introduced as just straight up like, I'm gonna kill all you guys. That's it. I'm done. And he's pretty straight to the point in terms of villainy. So in terms of a villain, no, especially because he does end up going on to have a redemption arc. And obviously there's the new shows that I'm not going to talk about. But overall, actually I want to talk more about his character. Because I think that there's little details about him, like the fact that he loves kids, which makes him a lot different from the governor. The governor's evil. I'm going to compare them. The governor's evil. The governor would have killed anybody and everybody that got in his way, no matter what. Also, Simon is another character that was willing to kill everybody to get his way. Negan, on the other hand, he's not evil. He was not willing to kill kids, and he wasn't willing to take out that many people. For no reason. Kinda. He kills people with a reason. That's what makes him different from the governor and Simon. And he also keeps Simon around. I'm jumping around a little bit too much. But he keeps Simon around because Simon scares people the same way that Negan scares people. So Simon is worse than Negan, but Simon is still scared of Negan. So Negan knows that as long as he can keep Simon in line, other people will fall in line. I'm going to start rambling now because I'm kind of like super invested in this. We have that little detail about Negan that he loves kids. I could be wrong about this, but I believe he was a teacher before the apocalypse. So that could also play into that, which is a good detail, by the way. And it's shown a little bit more in his character, like when Carl goes to the sanctuary and he kills a bunch of Negan's guys, that Negan just brings him home. He wasn't gonna do anything to Carl. There was no intention of ever killing Carl, and he wouldn't have. And he says it in a later episode when someone says that they heard that Negan had killed Carl, and Negan gets really offended by this, and he says, I would have never killed a kid. And it's something like that. He says he would have never killed a kid, and it especially wouldn't have been Carl. Negan loved Carl, like in a very fatherly way. And it's shown a couple times, like when again when he brings him back and he gives him spaghetti. And also when he meets Judith, he's like overjoyed. It's great. And he just has a good time with Judith. And even though everyone else around him is like really on edge because they know who Negan is and they're scared of him, Negan's not doing anything. He's having a good time. He's living his life. He's playing with the baby. He's chilling with Carl. And then when Carl ends up dying and Negan finds out about it through Rick, he gets like, you can see the sadness and maybe like worry and guilt in his face, because his next question is whether or not it was them, because they had bombed and like set fire to Alexandria. And the relief on that man's face when he finds out that it wasn't, like, that he didn't cause Carl's death directly. He's still sad, obviously, because he didn't want Carl to die, and he's very upset about it, but he's just glad that it wasn't because of something he did, because I feel like that would have weighed really heavy on his conscience for a while. And that shows like more of an empathetic side of Negan that we hadn't really got to see yet, besides when the Saviors came to Alexandria and they were threatening them, and Negan and Carl had that moment at the gate where Carl's like, oh, if somebody needs to die, you know, it can be me. He just wants to stop all this and all that, yada yada. And Negan gets really upset because Carl's not being genuine, and he really thought that they were having a moment there. Maybe I still think about that scene to this day, because I think it was very possible that Carl could have definitely talked Negan down. 100%. The way to get to Negan was to go through Carl somehow, which sounds like it doesn't make sense, but if you think about like his reaction and his actual, like, he seems like he's ready to like say, oh man, like, okay, Carl, he looks like he's ready to almost negotiate there. And then Carl just like runs off because it was fake. He wasn't, I mean, he was kind of being for real, but it was to distract so that everyone else could escape. And then when Negan finds out through Rick, he tells Rick, he's like, you see what you did? Like, Carl would have been alive if you had been there to stop him. If you had like just been there to be a father to him instead of trying to fight me, maybe Carl would be alive. And he starts blaming Rick for it, which was kind of too far, Negan. That's I think he was kind of wrong on that regard. He was right, but also indirectly it was kind of his fault, because if Negan had just stepped down when the people of Alexandria and Hilltop and everybody started fighting him, you know, it would have been over pretty fast. But because they kept on fighting and they didn't want to give up, it all kind of came together to cause this sort of distress in Carl that ultimately led to him dying. I think I have to wrap this up because it's the end of the video. Hooray! I made it. So, is Negan a good person? Yes and no. Negan's not evil. He's not a great guy. He did what he thought was best in the circumstances he had. Is he a good character? Personally, I think so. I think that's up to debate through other people, because obviously I don't know too much about it. Was he a good villain? He was an okay villain. I wouldn't call him the best villain in The Walking Dead, but he's definitely my favorite. Okay, well, that wraps this up. I hope everyone enjoyed that.